The quality of leadership in accounting firms has deteriorated over the last few years. Is that a bold statement? Is that true or false, Nick Sinclair?
I believe it's 100% true.
Well, we're going to dig into that today and find out why that is, because it is a courageous statement. We're talking about best practices for new emerging leaders in accounting firms. I got with me today Nick Sinclair from TOA Global. Nick, tell us real quick what you guys are all about.
Yes, so TOA Global is a talent solutions business. We help accounting firms to recruit global talent, predominantly through the Philippines, but any role that an accounting firm has, we can help place those in a global team.
And you've got a real interest, didn't you, in leadership, efficiency, productivity, helping accounting firms work better with the business models, with their staffing, with their capacity. So we're hitting leadership today. Do you talk to a lot of accounting leaders?
100%. So we've got over 1,100 firms that use us globally with over 4,100 team members. I also coach accounting firms through our business Top Firm, which is a new coaching business. So I talk to a significant amount of not only firm leaders, but team members working within firms.
I did a master's in my trip out of teaching. I was a high school math teacher. I did a master's in human resources to transition into the private sector. And we did a module on leadership. And there's a million leadership books out there, Nick, isn't it? And you ask for a definition of a leader and you'll get millions of different answers. In the Nick Sinclair Dictionary of Life and Business, how are you defining a leader in the context of an accounting firm?
Yeah, look, it's a great question. I think the reality of what I call leadership is around someone that is building the machine, building the process, the systems, and then training their team to be able to drive that. Leadership to me is in someone that is inspiring, someone that is helping to make the team members underneath them a better version of themselves and to be able to ultimately provide a better level of service to their clients.
Yeah. And you make a differentiation, don't you, between, say, a leader and a senior account manager or a director or something like that. I guess everyone's leading, but we're not just talking about managing here. We're talking about something more than that. It's not just a senior accounting role. So what differentiates it from just the bosses and the managers, Nick?
Look, everyone plays a leadership role in some way or another. And I think that's a big thing that's evolved is that traditionally partners and managers have been the traditional leaders within firms. But now with global teams and with more dispersed teams, we're seeing seniors and intermediates that now need leadership capability and skills to manage remote and global teams. So we're really seeing the evolution of leadership is all levels of your team now need those skills and capabilities, not just your managers and your partners.
And it's a fact of accounting life that they focus in their professional development on the technical requirements, CPD, CPE, whatever you're going to call it. But the softer stuff, the leadership, the maybe artificial intelligence might be in there and the prompt engineering, but presenting, persuading, communicating, presenting a vision, all of these things, they're not high on the list of skills to acquire for accountants. But nevertheless, they are absolutely crucial, aren't they, to making a firm robust, sustainable, future ready?
Yeah, it's one of the core competencies that we call success skills. I mean, it's commonly been called other names in the past, but it's simple things like how do you present? How do you present internally? How do you present to clients? How do you communicate? How do you guide and lead and inspire team members, no matter which level of the organization you're in? So the role has definitely evolved. And I know we started the podcast with saying that leadership has deteriorated in the last couple of years. And I truly do believe that because the level of leadership now has been pushed down. It's no longer just the most senior people in the firms. And I don't think we've done enough to really train them on those success skills to give them the capability of the leadership capability they need now, because technology is doing a lot more of our common roles, which means a lot more of our role is human-based. It's leading as opposed to doing, but we need to be able to have the capability and the skills to be able to lead.
That's a really good point. You can see why leadership might have deteriorated. There's not been the investment in it. It's not been given the priority. More and more people are having to lead at all levels of the firm, and they've not necessarily been equipped with the skills to do so. You mentioned there some key success skills in the programs that you run, Nick. Leadership obviously is one of them. Can you mention a few of the others?
Yeah, look, there's a range of, so we run different leadership programs depending on the stage of where someone's at in their career. So emerging leaders right up to like partner level. But you've got skill sets around how to manage simple things like how do you manage a team member? How do you do performance management? How do you teach them how to present? How do you teach them even how to be at a networking event, how to really effectively communicate, how to be able to sell? All of these are somewhat bundled into success skills that the modern accountant or the future accountant is going to need, as opposed to I'm a great technician. And I think that's part of the challenge is with leadership within firms. It was lead by example, meaning I'm first in, I'm last out, I'm grinding, I'm doing the work. So these days, modern accountants shouldn't be doing the work. The technology should do a lot of the heavy lifting. The more junior levels should be. So the skills that we need and the capabilities as we move through the ranks of a firm are all of these success skills that we just don't look at. So a lot of it comes around people management. It's how do I recruit? So how do I attract, manage, and retain the best talent? They're all skill sets that we need to get capability in, because the reality is with technology and with global teams, instead of it being a small ratio of direct reports, you're going to have a larger pool of people that you're managing. And that takes a completely different skill set to, when they're sitting in the office next to you or in the cubicle next to you.
I've done a show in the past and keynoted this at a few conferences on the 5 key skills that accountants need to stay modern and relevant. And it's kind of a pyramid, but at the bottom is technical skills, because that gets you in the game. You've got to stay current there. And accountants are generally very good at that. The next one is technological skills. And we don't expect accountants to be able to code and really geek out necessarily and know Python, but we need them to be able to know more than turn a computer on and off. So that's the technological skills. And then we've got commercial skills, commercial awareness, commercial acumen, business acumen, knowing how businesses run, thinking like an entrepreneur, because accountants don't necessarily do that well. But if they're moving into the advisory space, as most of them should be, then that's absolutely mandated. The fourth is people skills. You've hinted at a lot of those. Presenting, leading. A big part of that is communicating a vision and imbuing culture, setting an example. The fifth one is selling. You mentioned that as well. It's not a word that accountants like to hear, but even if you're not selling products and services, you're selling the vision of your firm for people to come and work for you. You are selling a proposition to a client. You're selling a project. You're selling an advisory package, whatever it is. You're selling an argument, an opinion, an excuse. You want influence. So all of those skills are in play, and we're asking a lot of accountants out. We need to get the technical stuff right, but learn all of these things on top of that that's not necessarily part of their qualifications to compete and be relevant in today's world.
Yeah, communicating with influence, all those things are, but I think that comes back to, as firm owners, we need to be the ones that really build a career plan and a training plan that's linked to that to give them the skills and capability. Because not all accountants are going to need those skills. Some people are just great technicians. They don't want to see clients. They don't want to do that. They want to sit in that side of the ledger. So it really comes back to org structure and design. But ultimately, it's about understanding, where do the team members want their careers to go? Where does that align with where the firm needs people in the future? And then building a prescribed training plan based on that individual to give them that capability and skill set that they need in 3 to 5 years. But start that now. Don't start it when you promote someone to be a manager, teach them how to be a leader. Start that 2 or 3 years and take them through those foundational steps. And a lot of the time we learn from experience. I know that, 10 years ago, I was a horrible leader. I thought I had to be the smartest guy in the room. I thought I had to come up with all the answers. Now I've realized how you actually properly lead people. And my role as a leader is more focused on training and developing and putting everything into my people to make them the most successful people, to hire people that are smarter than me. But it starts at the top, and then it starts with just standardized people processes to give them. I think the other skill set that is potentially missing in that pyramid, and I haven't mentioned it yet either, is the ability to interpret data.
Want to unlock your accounting firm's growth potential? Dreaming of growth but short on the accounting muscle to make it happen? TOA Global connects accounting firms to a global pool of skilled, pre-vetted talent. Whether you need junior accountants, senior specialists, or just extra hands for the busy season, TOA Global has the talent that you need. One client said, We've got our life back. We're not waking up at 3 a.m. anymore. So let your local team do what they do best while Toa Global takes care of the rest. Join over 1,100 firms scaling their growth and save up to 66% on your staffing costs. Visit Toa Global today for your staffing solution, toaglobal.com.
I think data analytics and data is a skill set that that typically accountants are not taught at university in depth, which is really around interpretation and meaning of data. Because, I mean, most businesses come down to one or two metrics or key numbers that drive businesses, but it's able to understand the data. And understanding that compared to doing a tax return is very different skill set and capability. So I think that is a skill set that they're going to need to understand and know more of in the future as well.
Are accounting firms any different to any other industries, Nick, in terms of what they expect from their leaders?
No, to be honest, I think that we're probably a little bit behind though. I think as accounting firms, we've been able to get away with a partnership model where the partners are the ones leading. Typically it's a pyramid. It's a 10-year progression. You've got more juniors down the bottom and less people at the top. I think we're really seeing a transition of the talent mix that we're going to have in the future being more like a diamond. You're going to have less people at the bottom, probably a similar amount at the top, but more in the middle. And more in the middle means you got more intermediates and seniors that are leading and providing different skill sets that they've had to provide in the past. So a fatter middle is what I call it. Yeah. It means that we are going to have to become better at really teaching these success skills and getting that into part of what we do.
Yeah. We have different personalities in accounting. We could probably plot them on a psychometric profile somewhere to say they're mostly introvert, and they're of a type. However, we're all different personalities, different weapons. What's your take on different leadership styles, particularly when you're coaching emerging leaders to develop their own way, Nick?
I'm a big believer in servant leadership. I think that it doesn't matter what type of, I suppose, disc profile or personality we have. I'm a big believer in how we lead and the reason why we lead a certain way. And servant leadership to me resonates because my role as a leader is to make my team better and to ultimately give them the tools to be successful, to train them to be world class. It's not to do their job for them. And I've done that in the past. And I mentioned before, I had to be the smartest guy in the room. I thought that's how leaders worked. So I don't necessarily think that the style of person we are, it's more about giving the capability and the skills. If we're not good at one of the things that I'm not good at, I'm pretty black and white. I'm pretty, I'm very focused on where I'm going. I'm not good at going, Rob, you've been doing an amazing job. I just want you to know that you're appreciated and valued. Yeah. But I learned in leadership the hard way that if I don't do that, it doesn't fill the bucket of my team member. But not all team members like that. Some of them hate it. So you need to understand the different personalities of your team, and then you need to build process. In my diary, I used to have with one of our senior leaders, let Ben know he's doing a great job. And that was in my diary for literally every 2 weeks because that's what he needed. So I don't think it matters what we are as people, but we need to understand intimately our people of who we're ultimately leading and what matters and is important to them. What are their goals, dreams, and aspirations? What motivates them? Is it money? Is it freedom of time? I'll give you 2 examples. One of our team members isn't driven by money. He's earning a good income. He wants, when he hits his numbers, to have a day off. He wants more time. So other team members, we've got 100% driven. They're at a different stage of life. Money is everything to them. So their way of rewarding them is all about money or monetary items. So I think that no matter what personality type we are, it's understanding. I mean, it's not about us. It's about our team that we serve and that we lead.
That makes good sense. I'm just thinking when I've coached leaders to understand the different ways in which their own people, when they do well, want to be recognized. You hinted at it there. Some like that public recognition, a round of applause, the whole team stand up and say they've done great. And for other people, that embarrasses them. They just want that quiet arm around the shoulder saying, you're amazing. And equally, when you mess up, I'm quite happy with a public remonstration to say, Brownie, you piece of shit, you really screwed up there. You've really let the team down. And I'd be mortified, but it would hit home. But other people, they wouldn't want that. They'd want that quiet arm around and say, hey, listen. So the good leaders of today, they've got to recognize what their people are doing. And you're on the record, Nick, as talking about the value of coaching in a leader these days. I'm just thinking back to the day where everyone was in the office and you could walk past someone's office and knock on the door and pop in for a chat, or you're at the water cooler. That's harder to do these days, to coach and mentor people. So speaking to coaching as a crucial skill for leaders in accounting firms.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think being able to drop into offices is leading anyway. It's because it's teaching people poor time management. It's teaching the wrong skills. And I think that is the old school way of doing it. And I think that for us within our business, we go right down to, when someone's in their second or third year, we're starting to basically give them leadership capabilities and skills. And it's through all of their career plans. So the key thing is having a career plan and starting to recognize and understand, all right, well, a graduate accountant, what skill and capability do they need? They need the ability to manage up, because they're not managing down, because they are the bottom of the triangle at the moment. But they need to understand, how do I manage up, and the skills that I need to be able to influence the people above me so that I'm heard and that I'm, whatever I'm struggling with, they're understanding. But I think it all links back to is having career plans. And to be honest, a firm has a certain level of trajectory of how we can accelerate careers and progress people through a firm. It's really just going, what is the success skills that they need at each level, and really honing in and focusing on those ones. But traditional leadership, or modern leadership these days, is very different to what it was in the past. It was very hierarchy. It was very, this is, you do what I say, you follow me, I lead by example. To these days, modern leadership is very different.
Yeah. On your Emerging Leaders course at TOA, I know you talk a lot about the importance of coaching leaders in providing effective advisory services, because that's in the mix now, isn't it? Just talk a little bit about that, Nick.
Advisory, to me, when I really break it down, is the ability to communicate higher technical work. It's just higher levels of work. But the challenge is that most managers or senior accountants and even partners have never been taught how to communicate with influence, to, like you said, that dirty word called sales earlier. Like, to me, everyone needs to be really strong at sales, because we're selling an outcome. We're selling value. It's not a dirty word, but having the capability to be able to communicate with influence, to be able to sell and effectively get your message across in a non-technical way, to show empathy and care. All of these are skill sets that realistically, when we're looking at the higher levels of leadership training, we're really focusing on more of those key skills, because that is what a senior, like a partner, needs to be doing, is high value work. So how do you communicate, a potential value-based pricing fee of $500,000, but you're saving the client $5 million in tax? You shouldn't be scared to put forward the value that you're representing by being able to provide that advice to them. So a lot of the leadership skills comes down to really at that level. It is sales and capability of communication.
Yeah. And we're dealing with an onshore and an offshore world these days. We've talked on this podcast, you've been on it before, about how talent is global. Talk to us about leading teams that are not in the office, Nick, that remote leadership style. What do we need to know there?
Yeah, I think that this just having global teams exposes poor leadership and poor or weak process and systems. And that's the challenge, that with remote teams now, where we're not all in one office, we're not all in one spot where you can drop in and have a conversation or look over someone's shoulder. Yeah, it really exposes where we lack either systems or process. And a lot of leadership is just having systems and process, which is communication rhythms, meeting rhythms, structures in place. And having a remote team and a global team just means you need to double down, meaning if you run a certain type of event locally, you need to do the same with your remote team members and your global team members. The amount of firms that have said to me, oh, look, we're doing a team building event this week. And I'm like, well, are all your remote team members from around the US flying in? And what about your global team? Oh no, it's just the local team. It's like, well, how's that work? So we need to have really clear, and that's really around engagement plans. So how do we engage our team? But it's about being inclusive. It's about being, your total workforce is where it is. It doesn't matter where they live or where they sit. But we need to be a lot more prescribed when they are remote teams and global teams, because it's harder. You can't see them. But one of the things we do say is you do need to go and see them. You do need to go and have that human connection. In leadership, nothing replaces the human connection and the trust that's built when you are face-to-face.
Yeah.
So even with remote and global teams, you need to do that, but you need to double down and be more prescriptive. Things like you need to message people more often. You need to check in on people more often when they're not in front of you, because you can't see them. You don't know what's going on in their world.
We hear the phrase, people are more likely to leave a bad boss and a bad leader than a bad firm. So when it comes to effective leadership, it's a key driver of retention, isn't it? Keeping your people. And that's going to help with the talent situation. So how much of a factor is good leadership in keeping your good people, Nick?
Oh, look, statistically, I know with our attrition, when a team member leaves TOA and they're working for a client, then 99% of the time it's because of who they're reporting to.
Yeah.
And the same as when we have teams that are really successful and then that manager leaves the firm locally and goes and works somewhere else and they get this new leader in and then suddenly it's a complete disaster. It's like, what has changed? Well, the leader was the difference. And you look at, a lot of sporting teams, you take players that are really, really bad at one club and they go to another club and they're superstars. What's different? The person that's coaching and leading them. And I think you see the same with performance. You see the same with, attrition and turnover. I was speaking to a firm the other day. They lost 50% of their team last year. And I said, well, what was the common problem? And they said, we worked out in the end, it was the leader and they're now gone and the attrition is gone. I'll need to figure that out a bit sooner. I think it's, what are the systems and process we have within a firm to enable us to ensure that we're doing things like 360 reviews so that we don't just get surprised that a leader's the problem and that's why all the team members are not performing or leaving.
Yeah. What do you see, Nick, in the firms that have good leadership in place and invest in their leaders?
They train their team every week. There's not a week that goes by where they're not doing training with their team.
And that's not formal training, is it? That just might be a little side conversation, or what does that?
No, it's formal training. So like with my team, for example, every week, 1 hour, relentlessly, I will do a training on them. I have the Nick's annoyed list. So it's typically what's annoyed me in the last week. If it's a lack of system and process, I'll redo the system and process and I'll retrain the team on it. It could be you're asking too many questions, you're not doing the right research, which is, that's a leadership thing because I've allowed that to happen. So it could be structure. So every leader that I've seen that is successful is coaching regularly. If it's not weekly, if it's a smaller team, it's at least fortnightly. They understand the dreams and aspirations of the team members. So they understand what they are, where they want to go in their career, and they're relentlessly focused on helping them achieve it as fast as possible. They've got a vision and a purpose for themselves. So this was a big part with, I shifted back into a CEO role for about 9 months while we transitioned our leadership. And the biggest thing that I realized was I'm not an example to my team. I was 51 kilos heavier than I am now, so 120 pounds. I was not reading. I was not going to educational events to become a better version of myself. And I really looked in the mirror and went, am I someone that people look up to? And I was like, well, probably not, because I'm not learning and growing. My aspirations and dreams, and I was flatlining really. My weight certainly wasn't there. I didn't have the energy. But when I shifted that, I started to lead by example. People now look up to me and go, well, if he can do it with the amount of travel, the amount of hours he does, why can't I? So it's being inspirational for your team and leading by example. So if you're not growing, if you're not developing and bringing new ideas in, and then you're not doubling down on training your team, why would I want to work for you? Why would I look up to you? Is your life the life that I really want? And that's probably why I won't stick around.
Yeah. Leadership is the way forward to navigate an uncertain world. Just paint a future for us, Nick, of the complacent leaders and the complacent firms that think they know it all. They think they've got everything in place. What does the future look like for them?
I really see the ability for firms that can transition from being doers and technical leaders to being true leaders are the firms that will grow they will be the firms that are able to serve a larger amount of clients in a more meaningful way. The traditional way of managing people will die a slow death. I said this on a previous podcast, 10% growth or less is pretty bad in this accounting world, given the ability for firms to be able to scale and grow and add more meaningful services to clients. If we don't shift the way that we lead, we're going to limit the ability for a firm to be able to grow and scale. And that's, for me, is the biggest thing. We're not going to be able to serve our clients in the most meaningful way because the old way of leadership is not the way that we can run firms in the future.
Yeah. And in closing, Nick, there are so many resources for firms that want to invest in leadership, and maybe just individuals in the firm want to get hold of some good courses, programs, sources of information. Talk quickly about what you do at TOA to help people with this.
So anyone that is a TOA client of ours, their team members have access to the leadership programs. If you're a client of ours, we do an emerging leaders program. We also do what we call an offshore best practice program. So one of the tools that we put in place is that we want to make you as capable as possible to grow in a global team and to be able to lead a global team, because without those skills, it won't work. So we have programs for both the client side of it, being the firm owners and the team members that are managing the global team, as well as, 10-year career plans that have very clear levels and roles and leadership programs throughout it and the success skills they need for the team members that are in the Philippines.
It's out there, folks. All the information you need. Go to TOA and see what they've got going on there. We'll put this in the show notes. And check out our Accounting Talent LinkedIn page as well, where we continue the conversation and put a few little extra goodies in there. We'll see you on LinkedIn. Nick Sinclair of TOA Global, it's been wonderful speaking to you today. Thank you for sharing on what the evolving, emerging leaders of the future are doing and looking like to serve their accounting firms and their clients. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Rob. Great conversation.